Awesome. Welcome back, guys. Hope you've all had a bit of caffeine and had some good chats over networking. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Stephen, would you join me up on stage and take it away on behalf of Lenvy? And I just want to say a massive thank you for being our headline sponsors today, sir. Your slides will be accessed by going right through there. You can just...
Thank you. So yes, hello everyone. So I'm Stephen Mayron. I think the first thing I'd like to say is that all the speakers that have been on so far have been absolutely fantastic. I'm very much less accomplished in that area, so bear with me. Well, I have got some nice pictures for you to look at, so that should help. So yeah, we are Lenvy, and Lenvy is an amalgamation of a few different companies, so 3 companies, and it's a relatively new company. But the 3 separate companies have lots of experience, decades of experience doing what they do. And this is what we do. So loan management, all the usual loan management stuff, and we've also got a risk factor there and know your customer. Yeah. So I'm head of engineering for the credit services side of the business, and these are the areas that our product covers, really. We can offer lending to pretty much any sector, I think. And yeah, this is our big ambition. As a whole, our ambition is to make lending fairer for all and even more accessible. So, a little bit about me. I started as a graduate developer a long time ago, too long ago, really. I've mainly worked in FinTech, although I had 5 years kind of working for a startup in business intelligence, which is very interesting, and I learnt an awful lot. Oh, by the way, could you give me a 1-minute reminder? Thank you. Yeah, I am passionate about building products, but I'm more passionate about working with people and helping people kind of achieve what we need to achieve and being happy working. Yeah, so this is the first of my nice pictures. It's a monkey. So I think I personally am quite interested in nature, and I think we can learn a lot from nature. But I'm going to try and draw some parallels with innovation and some animals at the beginning, at least. Hopefully, get you interested at the beginning. So yeah, this monkey's cracking a nut, and I've done this kind of a similar presentation to this before, and this was a video, and it was much more interesting. But I didn't think a 3-minute video was a good idea on a 20-minute slot. So, so yeah, this monkey's innovated in order to crack his nut and meet the achievement of eating it. He's got it on a nice groove on a log. He's got a nicely sized rock, and he can use it. So essentially, he's using existing skills. He's learned some skills, and he's using tools. However, he wouldn't have just started out like that. I'm saying he. I'm not sure whether it's a he. But he would have had to go through many iterations, and he would have had to fail a lot. You know, he could have broken his foot with a rock. He could have used another log to try and crack the nut. He could have tried to bite it, all of which wouldn't work. So he's had to iterate and learn as he goes along. Yeah. So a few years ago, I went on a South American trip. I went to the rainforest, and I also went to the Galapagos. And on some of the islands, you can't move for these creatures. These are marine iguanas. and you can't move for them because they're so successful. And they derive from land iguanas, and they made an innovation. I won't go too much into evolution because one, it'll take a long time, and two, it's hard to explain. But yeah, land iguanas. There was a lot of competition for food on the islands, and so they had to try and diversify and innovate. And the ones that were more able could reach the ocean floor and find sources of food there. And how evolution works is those traits that allow them to get to the ocean floor proliferate and produce essentially a new species, which is marine iguanas. So there I'm trying to draw parallels that we should all try to find food on the ocean floor, I guess. So yeah, it's important, I think, that we all innovate in life and at work. And it's important to us at Lenvy as well, and it's important to all of us in business to innovate for all of these reasons here. So there's lots of different types of innovation, not only technical, but there's process innovation and lots of other types. So examples are that why we should do it is that we can, in our business, offer functionality which nobody else does, and offer better versions of functionality that other companies do. And also with innovation, we can obviously gain efficiencies, which helps in all different kinds of areas. So similar to the marine iguanas, you have to push the boundaries, i.e. dive into some water and see what's there, to understand what is possible. Because if you don't, then you don't know what's possible, and you don't know how far you can take, say, technology or processes. And like many of us, and like many of our companies, Lenvy tries to keep abreast and lead in some respects in developing trends. And I think a lot of us are now, if not for a while, starting to look at AI in how we can improve things. But in the workplace and in nature, there's a lot of barriers that we need to overcome, and these are some of the barriers. So hopefully, and one of the reasons that we're all here is that we've all got customers, and they can take a lot of time, and they should be important, and they are important to us. Obviously, that takes away from innovation time, but it's important to balance that time, I think, between kind of paid work and investing in the future, really. If you can combine the two, if you can combine paid work and innovation, then all the better. Other time constraints are everyday work that we've got to do. Like filling in timesheets and internal work. And obviously, this is all about FinTech, so technical stuff, and technical debt is something that we're all aware of, and something that we all have to try and fit into that time and priorities aspect. And yeah, you need to balance addressing technical debt with all the other things that we need to do. And at some point, you need to innovate to properly solve your technical debt as well. So these are all things that take time. And I think somebody else mentioned culture as well earlier. You have to have the right culture in a business. whether that's got all my notes on, but you have to have the right culture. And sometimes that's not there. Do you know how you scroll down on the slides here? Sorry. Oh, that's one. Yeah, cheers. You just scroll as you normally do, apparently. So yeah, if we don't invest in skills, and we don't have the right culture, then innovation will suffer. We also need to invest in innovation. So, as I say, Lenvy is quite a new company. We used to be, so all the different companies that form Lenvy used to be part of a much larger organisation. And that larger organisation, the main priorities of that wasn't credit services. So it was really kind of hard to get buy-in for things like innovation. But now, and for a while, we've got a really big focus on innovation and improvement. So that's really good. And with innovation, we can bring the company forwards. And how are we doing that? And how I think a lot of companies do it, but I'll just explain a little bit of how we're doing it. So the culture I was just talking about, we class ourselves as having a growth culture now, where people can grow personally and for the business. And that kind of comes from the top, really, to give the permission, I guess, to spend time on things like innovation. I'm going to say innovation quite a lot, I think. And the finite mindset and the infinite mindset is something Simon Sinek, I'm sure lots of people have heard of him. He refers to that in a book called The Infinite Game, which it's not a new thing that he's invented, but you know, it's a bit like the marine iguana. The infinite mindset is like thinking that there could be something in the ocean that's interesting, rather than a finite one where you're in your silo and not thinking about what else could be possible. And I've talked a little bit about investment, but what we've done, we took a look at our online training, and we switched to something called Udemy, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. But it's really good. It's really good for engagement and rewarding achievement, and yeah, just getting people to learn new things. We encourage people to go to courses and conferences like this. I've been encouraged to do this, rightly or wrongly. And one big thing actually that we've got is a training team that's dedicated to making sure that people have the right training and seeing what they want to do and being able to deliver it. And I put communication there 3 times because it's really important. It's not only important with innovation, I think it's very important for everything. One thing, and I mentioned direction from the top before, but communication about the direction of the product and of the business is really important for everybody to understand, so that you know where we need to be. We might not know actually how to get there, but that's what the innovation part is about. But that initial communication about that is really important. We also share quite regularly. So we share achievements. We have regular, company meetings, but in those we share achievements, but we also share failures. And as I mentioned, the iguanas and the monkeys would have failed quite a lot of times. And it's important to recognise failure and so that everybody can learn from it as well. So yeah, communication is just really important, and it's easier to succeed as a company or as a group rather than individuals ploughing their own furrows. What we also do is actively encourage people to think outside the box. So one thing that we've introduced is innovation challenges. And I suppose this is the most productive thing that we've done in this aspect. So I said one of the barriers is customers to innovation, really, just putting time into customers, which is really important. But we have now started spending a week or a bit more recently and saying to our customers, who have been really, really helpful and supportive about it, that actually we're not going to deliver anything within that period. And we do maybe a couple a year at the moment, and I think they're really successful, so we might possibly do more in the future. But yeah, that's dedicated to learning and innovating. And the last couple that we've done have been on artificial intelligence. And there's been lots of good stuff come out of that, and some things have been integrated straight into the product and straight into the workplace. One of which, it was a big gap, and it is AI-driven document processing, which saves call centres a lot of man hours. So it's about classifying, recognising, and integrating with email servers, which is usually a very manual and painstaking process for the call centre staff. So that's one of the recent success cases. We've also had an AI integration with Teams. So the people who developed it in this week called it Ask Jules. So it's a localized chat GPT where you can ask it any questions, basically, such as what is a loan, which you kind of should know working at Lenvy, or something like what is our policy on parental leave. I've just had the 1 minute warning, so I'm going to move on. We also have close partnership with Microsoft, especially with the AI suite that they've got. And we've been that's I'd class that as innovation, because we're kind of pushing the boundaries of that. Right, I'm going to finish with some more nice pictures. So this car somehow ended up in the water, and they've got a crane trying to get it out. And the crane falls in. And there it is. So that's a new problem. What do we do with that? We get a bigger crane, which is going to be foolproof, no doubt. Oh no, it's not. So, Mr. Einstein says it better than anybody else there. So we think at Lenvy that innovation is very important, because trying the same things over and over again doesn't help achieve the benefits of the innovation and evolution which I outlined earlier. Thank you very much.
Just stay there for 1 second. Just got a quick question for you. Thank you very much, Stephen. That was brilliant. I love the end there. I think it came through really strongly about how customers are at the heart of innovation within Lenvy, and it doesn't matter where we go in FinTech. You know, we're still going to have customers in 5, 10, 20 years' time, aren't we? So it was great to hear that. You mentioned AI as well. So what's your take on AI? You know, how is it going to impact the future of lending? I just thought you could quickly answer that question. Like you mentioned it in your presentation.
That's a good question. Wasn't expecting.
Sorry to catch you out with it, but I just thought I'd draw upon that a little bit.
Well, there's lots of ways. I mentioned one there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I've gone a bit blank. Sorry.
Okay, no worries, mate. Thank you very much. Well done, though, on your presentation. That was awesome. So our next speaker, just move that one on 1 second. So Nabil, would you mind joining me up on stage? It's been a long time, sir. But yeah, really good to see you again. This is your microphone. I'll give you a little warning as well when you get close to time, but I'm sure that won't be an issue. And you can move through your slides using this clicker here. You can just about see them as well if you stand around here.
Brilliant.
Over to you, sir.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Nabil Irshad, and I lead MasterCard's government and public sector business for the UK and Ireland. I'm really delighted to be here today, so thank you very much to Joe and the FinTech North team for the invitation to speak, and obviously in such a wonderful venue. I was joking with Darren, my colleague, earlier on. I promise you we didn't communicate this before, but whereas he has a very bright green T-shirt, I've got very bright green socks, and we didn't communicate about that before, and there's no telepathy, but just I thought I'd share that insight with you all. I am really, really excited to be here today. This actually marks the end of about a 4 or 5 week period for me, where I've been on the road traveling, not just within the UK, but also across continental Europe, talking about government, talking about payments, talking about digitization, transformation. And of all the events and things that I've been to, this is the one that I've been most looking forward to. And I know what you're thinking. He probably says that to all the conferences he goes to. But genuinely it is, and it is because I get to talk about data, which is what I'm really interested and super passionate about. But not just the data that's exciting in itself, but actually the application of that data as a force for good, and as for a transformational force for good, particularly in the public sector, which is a lens through which I look at that. So really, in the next kind of 15, 20 minutes of my presentation, what I want to try and do is to bring to life how we as MasterCard are using the payments data that we sit upon and that we work with, and how that's being applied and used in the public sector to really help with very tangible, very real-life issues and problems that councils, national government departments, and others are really kind of grappling with. And for me, it's really important, and why I feel so passionate about it is because this is the stuff that actually matters. This is about helping local high streets become more resilient. It's about thriving communities. It's ultimately about making all of our lives as citizens better. So that's what really gets me fired up about this. But before I do, I just wanted to talk a little bit around, I guess, the sort of data that we sit upon. And some of you may be very familiar with card payments and the schemes and how they operate, but some of you may not be. So I thought I'd just start initially by giving you a bit of a scene set around the data that we see across our network. So MasterCard is a payments technology company, obviously, you know, most well known for being a card, for facilitating card payments, although that's not exclusively what we do. But when we think about those card payments, you know, I just want to try and impress upon you just the volume of data that we sit upon on our network. So there's over 2.5 billion cards, MasterCard cards out there globally. There's over 100 billion transactions that take place across our network every single year, and that number is growing, by the way, all the time, particularly in developing markets. And the third element is around the connections that we have with all of the merchants, which in our language is essentially retailers, but retailers, merchants all across the world, 50 million or so, or nearly approaching 50 million of those. And what I want to do is, I mean, those numbers are very big and hopefully probably a bit impressive, but really what I want to try and convey with that is that actually when we talk about data in the public sector, and one of the things that we sort of talk a lot about is actually the size of that data, the sheer quantity actually provides a really good and strong, robust level of confidence in terms of actually what the data insights provide around consumer behaviors. And this is actually what this kind of data ultimately does. It talks about what everyone purchases. And people know, you know, alongside your Google internet history, actually what you buy is pretty much, some of the most intimate and most, important things in your life, is actually what you buy. And so you get a lot of insights and rich insights from the purchases, which we see through our network. And where this is really important in the public sector sphere is because the public sector, it has a huge range of data that it can access, but a lot of that data is relatively small in terms of sample size, but it's also very slow to access. You think of the stuff that the National Statistics Office produces, etc. It's often 4 or 5 months after the event and so forth. I was in Dublin Airport a few days ago, and I was sitting there on, in one of the gates waiting for my flight, and I actually saw people, the passenger survey teams, who were going out with iPads and literally asking people, how long did you stay in Dublin for, and how much did you spend? And I felt particularly bad because they approached one group, which was clearly recovering from a stag do, and asking them to remember how much they spent, where they spent it, and also even where they work. And I think a lot of those things were probably quite challenging for them. So actually the data that they get from all of that is also potentially quite problematic. So the data here that we see on our network is actually what consumers actually do. And we often know that what consumers say they do, but actually what they do behave and how they actually do spend the money is often different. So that's just something I wanted to kind of impress upon with this particular slide. But you may be wondering, the data that's generated through a card payment, what does that actually involve? And so I thought I would just include this because this is actually the stuff that is the bread and butter of a card payment transaction across our rail. So it's important for us to be able to process a transaction. But it's a really, really rich seam of data which we can use to provide a lot of analyses. But I'll break it down. So the first thing is when you make a card payment, we can see information about the type of card it is, whether it's a credit card, whether it's a debit card, prepaid, etc. We have information about the amount that was spent, whether it was a purchase or a refund and so forth, and also an indication about whether it was a domestic or international transaction. That's very important, and I'll talk a bit about that a bit later. We also see information about the retailer or the merchant that you've shopped at. So where is that retailer located? Information about what the type of retailer is. In the MasterCard universe and card payments, we talk about MCC codes. These are merchant category codes. These are very, very granular level descriptions about what a particular retailer does, whether it's a petrol station, a retailer, clothing, a bar, nightclub, etc., etc. There's also information there about whether it was an online purchase, whether it was a bricks and mortar purchase, and really importantly, there's data as well about the geolocation of that particular merchant. So where is that merchant registered? And so, with fair degree of accuracy, where did that transaction take place? And finally, and this is through anonymized algorithms and data sets, we can also provide information about and model where the card holder has come from. So actually being able to understand, where was the person who made that transaction, where did they come from? Were they local to the area? Did they come from outside? Did they come from overseas? All of that information can be derived from that. And really, what I want to try and kind of convey through this is that the data is very, very detailed, we see, on an individual transaction level. But then if you multiply that by the 2.5 billion cards that we have, the 100 billion transactions we have across all those merchants, it's a really huge, it's both very big, but it's also very detailed. And that is incredibly valuable when we're thinking about the application of this data as a force of good in the public sector in particular. It's really important because it can provide very rich information about how citizens are behaving and where they're going and what they're doing. And I'll talk a bit about why that's particularly helpful and important when we think about the applications of this in real life. So how can this data be used to help communities? And we've kind of broadly bucketed this up into kind of 4 main areas in which we see data is being used as a force for good in the public sector in particular. So one area has been around the idea of baselining. So particularly since the COVID pandemic a few years ago, but also since we've had challenges around the energy crisis, precipitated by the war in Ukraine, through cost of living, through changes in interest rates, etc. It's been really important for a lot of local authorities and organizations that we work with to be able to baseline data, looking at what is the as-is current state of spending and consumer activity versus what it was, for example, several years ago, or what it might be in the future when we get future data returns. And so that baselining use case is really, really important, particularly when you're looking at high street resilience and looking at how have high streets kind of evolved over the last few years with the changes in working patterns and, as I say, off the back of COVID, etc. That's been really important. The second area is around strategy. So a lot of government departments and local authorities are also thinking about strategically about what policies they want to follow, and also how do they structure those policies, and that data is particularly important. And in London, for example, one of the big strategies they have is being a 24-hour city, because there's over 1.5 million people in London who work actually in the nighttime economy, so work sort of between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. And one of the things that they've been really keen to do is just trying to promote it as a 24-hour city, a city that works for everyone throughout the whole day, not just during the traditional 9 to 5, etc., which is what the majority of people kind of work and kind of operate in a sense. Thirdly, there's implementation. So actually when deploying a policy or deploying a change, and what is the actual impact of that, and looking at that during the life cycle and being able to tweak and change throughout that particular project. So one of the big bugbears that many people here I'm sure have come across are, and this isn't a political view, I'm just, it is obviously very controversial in some areas, are LTNs or low traffic neighborhoods. So actually assessing the impact of things like that on a particular area, for example, on the high streets. If you close off a particular road, you pedestrianize a particular area, what does that do to the high street? What does that do to consumer spending? Is it a positive? Is it a negative? What are the trends over the time, etc.? These are the sorts of things that the data can help answer and can help really articulate over periods of time. And lastly, evaluation, which kind of links to that point really, which is once you've enacted a policy and you want to actually demonstrate whether it's actually met the original objectives or KPIs that you set at the start, actually evaluating it and having real data. And that's one thing that we found, particularly with some of the national government departments when they're looking at policies, they've found very, very helpful, because often policies are announced with a big fanfare. There's a lot of activity around that, and then the implementation happens, people kind of forget about it and so forth, and then really people forget about why did we do this in the first place, and actually was it even successful? So it can help with a lot of that. Now, before I introduce the next slide, I just want to say it might be a bit controversial, and I apologize in advance for it, because it's an example that I'm going to use, and it's not from the north. It is from the other city beginning with an L. And the reason I do that, I know, so I'm sorry. But the reason I do that, and I will just caveat, we work with organizations across the UK. To be very clear, we've got projects, for example, with the Leeds University and the Consumer Data Research Council there. We've done some work in the Northeast, in Newcastle. We've actually got some work that we're doing here in Liverpool with the university, which I can't speak about at the moment, but which hopefully will be published soon. So we do work across the UK, also in the North as well. But the reason why I picked London is actually because what they've done there is very interesting in terms of actually bringing to life the applications of the data for real life problems that are being faced by authorities. And I would love to be able to, work with, organizations across the UK in a similar fashion, because I think what they've done there is quite innovative and quite interesting. But, I'm very happy to speak to anyone afterwards about that, if you want to learn more about that, but really keen that, this is a kind of model that we think really, really works. And actually what's interesting is that the way that they've kind of curated the data and used it is actually being seen as and being discussed actually across the UK, and we're having discussions, for example, in Scotland around something similar, actually also overseas and technically, but in Dublin as well. But I just wanted to kind of caveat that. So in London, what are we doing? So London, the Greater London Authority launched something called the High Street Data Service a few years ago, and really what this was about was actually bringing together sources of data from a variety of different partners, MasterCard being one, but also data from BT, data from Google, data from, I think, Experian, a few other sources as well, and actually curating all of that into a centralized data hub, where they visualize all of that data, they make it sort of intelligible and sort of understandable for all of the different borough councils across London, but also business improvement districts and other London bodies, including the Metropolitan Police, TfL, etc. And really what that data hub is for is to provide very, very granular information about all of the different 200 town centres, 600 or so high streets across London, and really providing a lot of rich insight into what is happening on a relatively real-time basis. And that's really, really important, because as I mentioned before, one of the issues faced by a lot of public sector organizations is the timeliness of data. What happened at Christmas last year, you probably won't find out until the middle of the summer, once the data's all been collated. The data that, not just ourselves, but others are producing here is much, much more real time. So we can actually see the impact of events and other things, relatively quickly after they've happened, and provide insights around all of that. The data that we're particularly providing, just out of interest, is transactional indice data, which is broken down really interestingly intraday, so we can actually look at activity that's happening during the day, so what's happening around about breakfast time, lunchtime, dinner time, and also at night time. And again, that feeds into the point I was mentioning before around one of London's objectives, which is to become a 24-hour city and to have a nighttime economy that works for everybody. They were very interested in understanding not just about what the spend trends were looking like day to day or week to week, but actually what was happening during the day. And that's been particularly interesting as well, since the changes obviously in hybrid working and the changes in people's commuting patterns, because that's also been affected by, we can see some of the effects of that in the data that was sort of we see. So I just wanted to sort of, I guess, conclude a little bit with just a few examples and, as I say, kind of really bringing it to life around how that data is being harnessed for public good, just by using a few examples. So one of which is a really interesting one about the South Bank in London. So this is the area sort of just south of the river, which includes like the Waterloo area, it has the Tate Modern, it has Shakespeare's Globe, also has the National Theatre. And there was a very interesting case where they have a market that operates there from Monday to Fridays. And the question that was being posed is, do we want to open up this market on a Saturday as well? And do we want to go through the process of getting a license? And actually, will it be worth doing it? Will there be enough footfall? Will it actually generate a positive economic return? And so they use some of our data, but also other data to be able to help answer that question. And I don't want to get too technical into it because we've only got a limited amount of time, but they use synthetic data sets to be able to model out the impact of having that market trading on a Saturday versus if it didn't operate on the Saturday, and looking at the comparisons over the period of time. And they use that to actually answer that question, which was actually, yes, we do think it is valuable to open up this market on a Saturday and to go through the process of applying for licenses, and also taking into account the additional costs around security and cleaning and all the rest of it. It did make sense to do that. Another really good example, slightly different, was actually from London Borough of Wandsworth, when the Tooting area there, where Tooting High Street, which is a very well-known high street, it had recovered, like many other high streets, relatively well after the pandemic. But in the middle of 2022, around about the time of the energy price rises and a lot of the kind of issues with interest rates and so forth, they found a disproportionate drop on the particular main high street there versus other high streets in their area and also in surrounding London boroughs. And the question they asked was, why is this high street particularly affected? Like, why are the businesses here really struggling? And what can we do to try and help those businesses be more resilient and help the communities there still have a high street that's worth going to? And so they did a lot of analysis using our data, other sources of data, but also using qualitative surveys as well, asking people in the area about it. And they, the hypothesis was actually it was around fuel poverty that was particularly driving the decline in transactions and the decline in activity on that particular high street, because in that particular area, it's surrounded by a relatively deprived community, and they were more disproportionately affected by the rise in fuel costs and so forth, compared to other areas in high streets which had more affluent households nearby. So again, the way that the council then sort of actioned something off the back of that was actually to provide particular targeted fuel poverty support in those particular areas as well, and to help particularly those businesses there. So again, a really good example of how data can be used for public benefit to help make communities more resilient, and also to help the people who live there, continue to thrive and to continue to do well. And then we actually, as MasterCard as well, also produce data. So one of the projects we did was actually looking at restaurant spending, which is the big kind of black diagram at the top, where we looked at restaurant spending across London, since the kind of changes in commuting patterns, and looking at different spend and activity around that. And it's kind of shown that some areas have been particularly resilient, others like Canary Wharf and so forth, which are kind of towards the east of London and kind of much more focused around work and jobs, have been less resilient. And so again, that helps the GLA to think about, when we have targeted support and so forth, where do we do that? Where do we target that support? Who can we help most, and where does that help need to be directed? And one really interesting application, which got the attention of the mayor is talked about it, is about a month or actually earlier on this month, Mayor Sadiq Khan launched a off-peak fare rates for across all of Friday. So through the data and the analysis that we and others have been producing, London hasn't really recovered. It's recovered on most other days of the week, but it hasn't recovered particularly on the Fridays, where people still are just not coming into the office. People are not going out as much. There's a real challenge, particularly for hospitality businesses in the evenings there. So as a result of that, one of the things that the mayor did was invest around £20 million to offer a discounted rate of travel on the TfL network on the Fridays to try and help stimulate economic activity on the Friday, but also to sort of, in a sense, load balance people's journeys in and out of London across the whole week, not just focused on, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a bit of Monday as well. So really trying to help the hospitality businesses. And, we'll see over the next few months whether that's been successful. But again, that falls under that fourth bucket I mentioned before, around the evaluation of policy and data being able to use to really assess whether something has delivered upon the objectives that was set. And, the sort of almost applications of this, in the public realm, but also outside the public realm, of course, which we do, is kind of endless. It's kind of really limited only by the questions that are being asked. And I'll one interesting one, a couple just to mention in conclusion, was we did an analysis around we called it the Swift lift, but it's the impact of Taylor Swift when she tours around the world. And, Kel Surprise, right? But she's like a mini country GDP on wheels when she goes around to various places. And we looked at some of her tour dates in the US and the impact of Taylor Swift performing there around not just a 2.5 radius, particularly in the area, but also wider around. It's really marked how much accommodation expenditure goes up, food spending, general economic activity massively benefits when she in particular travels. And actually, she's coming over to Europe, I think, later on, and we're going to be probably doing a bit of analysis around that as well. So, the idea of events analysis is really, really interesting. And, again, with London, we are looking at the Notting Hill Carnival, and some of the work that we're doing with Liverpool, which will be announced soon, is also on that kind of similar theme. But also around tourism as well. One of the things that a lot of places are struggling with at the moment is around, in some cases, over-tourism, but in some cases, under-tourism. So over-tourism being too many people going to the same places around the same times of year. And so how do we try and kind of ease out that tourism and try and ease out the pressure on particular areas, during peak times of the year, and kind of encourage people to go to different parts of a particular city or an area, but also under tourism, so which areas are underperforming. We've done some work with Visit Britain before in the past. We've looked at different parts of the UK to look at tourism spend and looking at what do different tourists from different countries do when they come to the UK. And, American tourists behave very differently to, say, Chinese tourists, who behave very differently to tourists from the Middle East, who behave differently to tourists from the Europeans. So from Europe. So really being able to understand how different kind of sets of consumers behave and so forth, again, through using that data, can really help to target effective tourism policies, management policies, etc. So I just wanted to give a real snapshot and flavor of that. And really, I'll just conclude by saying, what I want you to really take away from this is that, data in general is incredibly valuable and important, but really it's the application of that data that is the thing that is, I think, much, much more important. And, from our perspective at least, the payments data that we see on our network has been absolutely invaluable in terms of helping to support, in the public sector realm, certainly for kind of on the theme of Force for Good, has been around helping the public sector to deliver much, much more effective policy, but also to really articulate the value of those policy and actually evaluate whether or not it's really met its objective. So I'll conclude there, but yeah, thank you very much for listening, and very happy to have a conversation afterwards in one of the breaks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very good, very good. Awesome. I tell you what, it's a good job we're best friends, because I'm not sure how that London slide got past our northern sensors there, but maybe you can make it up to me with some Taylor Swift tickets, possibly, Nabil. That would be good. No, seriously, that was fascinating, and I know you're doing a lot of great work in the north as well, which maybe at a future event we could dig into some of that when it's ready to be talked about and consumed. Right, we've got a fascinating fireside chat coming up next. So if Peter and Ian could join me up on stage. We've basically got a living room. We don't actually have a fire, I'm afraid. If we did, we'd probably have to get out of the building quite quickly. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves and take it away from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. And good afternoon, I think is actually now, everyone. We're now in the afternoon slot. And what we're going to do, really, over the next 15 minutes is introduce you to Vilya Solutions. You probably don't know much about Vilya Solutions, but hopefully you'll know a bit more after 15 minutes. Talk a little bit about the Nordics and FinTech innovation in the Nordics, and also just talk about key trends in the deposits market. Just before we kick off, a couple of introductions. So I'm Ian Cornelius. I'm a board advisor, but spent a 25-year career in financial services most latterly 11 years as Executive Director at Skipton Building Society. And I'm joined here by Peter Back. So Peter has come all the way from Sweden, where Vilja Solutions originate. Peter is the regional director, and he's very much leading the charge into the UK, and we'll talk more about that. And actually, we're also joined, I should mention, by Frederick, who's the CEO of Vilja Solutions, and Madeline, who's the CMO. So it's great to have a Swedish contingent here.
Ah.
So Peter, to kick things off,
Right.
who are Vilja Solutions?
Yeah, who are we? So first of all, exciting to be here, and it's a pleasure to tell more about Vilja. So Vilja Solution is a Nordic FinTech company. We've been around for 15 years, and we've basically been servicing financial institutions and banks very well in our own region. The clients we serve basically ranges from the largest listed international banks down to niche banks and tech banks in Sweden. As an example of our clients, we have the French bank, BNP Paribas, obviously extremely huge. I think you're all familiar with it. Another client of ours is the European debt collector Hoist Finance. And so what do we service to our clients, or what do we provide to the market? So we are a cloud-native core banking solutions provider. And amongst our modular offerings, we have buy now, pay later, we have loans, mortgages, we have leasing, and yeah, Ian, deposits. That's why we're here, right? So, and an interesting fact, and which we are very proud about, is that we basically have the lion's share of the savings market in the Stockholm region for smaller and medium-sized banks. So yeah, that's Vilja.
Yeah, so you're a really significant player, I know, in the Nordic market, and you got a very comprehensive solution, as you just described. Why are you here in the UK? Why are you thinking about entering the UK market?
Thanks for asking. So we have basically we basically have customers in 7 or 8 countries, and in UK and Ireland we have clients. So we're basically following our clients as they expand and enter into new countries. So it's basically been natural for us to take in this leap. Also, we can see there is a vibrant market here in the UK. I mean, there are many buzzing niches, like the building society sector, for instance. What else? Yeah, Gartner Group, the analyst house, they issued a report. Actually, it's just recent. It's this March. And they made a study, a survey of 64 core banking providers in the European region. And if you look at the outcome, Vilja was really amongst the 15 top-ranked vendors. So that's something we're extremely proud of. And now it's getting even better. If you look at the number of new businesses executed last year, or if it was the past 12 months, we score top 3. So I mean, for us it's natural. Yeah, I have to say we're also building alliances as collaborations. And yesterday there was a press release announced that we are partnering up a strategic relationship with Mast Tech. They are a cloud-native origination partner. And we're super excited to work with them. Joyce, you're here, the CEO. So yeah, I think it's natural. And yeah.
Thanks, Peter. It's a really impressive track record over a relatively short period of time. So I think you'd be really welcome here in the UK market. I mean, my experience of the UK banking building society market is there's a lot of legacy platforms out there. There's a lot of legacy still to be dealt with. You know, I think cloud-native, digital banking platforms, I think there's enormous scope for Vilja. So I'm sure you'll do really well. But I think let's just actually reflect on the Nordic market, because I think the Nordic market is really interesting. You know, in many ways, the Nordics have been ahead of the UK. Things like adoption of mobile. Think about Nokia. Okay, they're not leading now, but Nokia led the way for a long time. Thinking about Klarna. So the Nordics and Sweden have been very digitally mature for some time. Tell us a bit more about that and why Sweden and the Nordics are so sort of developed digitally.
Right. It's a good question. And it goes back to 1995, where the government really decided to invest heavily in digital infrastructure. So, and they really made sure that broadband was available for the full population. And the Swedish population, they are really interested. They embraced this, so they hooked up to the internet. And once again, the government gave tax reliefs if you bought your own PC. So you got a really reduced price. So we basically hooked up quickly on internet and got going. And I really picked up one of the things here, Ian, that were talked about in the prior speech, which was the digital identities. And they were issued nationally in Sweden, and they were personal digital identities. And I really think that spun things off. I mean, it not only made it safe to go onto internet, but as we've been talking about earlier as well, easy to share data and do it in a secure way. So yeah, I think that's one of the key things.
No, fascinating. And I know this sort of digital maturity has led to huge consumer demand for slick, accessible digital banking. So, for example, some stats, I understand that 85% of the Swedish population have access to online banking and registered for online banking. Only 2% of transactions in Sweden are in cash. That's by value. So it's largely a cashless society. So, the really impressive adoption of digital. So Peter, tell us a bit more about Vilja and the digital solution that you're offering with Vilja to bring that to the UK.
Right, yeah. So the founders of Vilja, they, at the time, in 2007, when they decided to leave their C-level positions at Citibank and start their own bank, they basically foresaw these trends that they really would like to give better customer experiences. So when they were searching for a core banking platform, they couldn't find one. They couldn't find one that suited their business needs. So obviously they started to develop and build a core banking solution of their own. And that was so successful, right? That served their needs and the clients extremely well. But the competition heard about it, and they really wanted to buy that from the founders. So they really spun that solution off in a company of its own. And from there, they started to market and sell it. And so you can basically say that Vilja originated from a bank to provide to banks. Yeah, that's in short.
Great story. Okay, so you're over here in the UK now. I think you actually established a Leeds office, which is fantastic. It's great that you're actually focusing on the north. None of these London-based offices. We're supporting the north, which is brilliant.
So I don't have to be ashamed about selecting Leeds, right? Instead of London, you mean?
No, although I know you did admit you're a Liverpool supporter, so
I am
I'm sure that
indeed.
will go down well. But Leeds, Liverpool, it's all the north. That's good. So you're over here in the UK. What are the top 3 benefits that the Vilja platform will offer UK banks or building societies that take it up?
Right. I mean, obviously, it's the digital experience. I think that's a core thing. But certainly, a better customer experience is what we really hope that we will be able to provide. Optimize internal efficiencies as well is truly important. And also, we can see that as the market is changing so quickly and there is regulations changing immediately, we can really, with a modern platform, make sure you can easily adapt to those changes. I mean, in terms of providing new products and respond to regulations.
So you took their customer experience efficiencies and sort of adaptability. Tell us a bit more about how the Vilja platform will improve customer experience.
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, the clients today, they would like to have an option. Either you can do it, your business is at a brick and mortar office, or you can do it online. And you really want to do it online anytime, any place where it fits your needs. And obviously, the banks or the financial institutions, they would really like to provide customized services. So that's one thing, that's a key thing that we're really seeing amongst our clients. And also, that increases loyalty and customer satisfaction quite significantly.
And you talked also about efficiency, and efficiency is a big issue for banks, building societies. I think we're probably at peak margin. Margins are coming down. People are more and more focused about cost. How do you use things like AI? How will Vilja support driving efficiency?
That's a good question. I mean, Vilja is absolutely obsessed about automation, and we have a great belief of reducing manual steps and making sure that you automate as much as you can. You build logic into the system. So I would say by doing that, obviously, you can reduce manual labor, but you can also reduce the risks, and obviously, you can take away a lot of things that are costly.
So yeah, automation built in from day one rather than lots of manual processes and workarounds that plague, I think, banks and building societies. Really good. Let's talk actually a bit about the deposits market. I think it's really interesting, and you talked earlier how Vilja have a leading position in the deposits market in the Nordics, which is really interesting. And the deposits market overall, or savings, whatever you want to call it, I think it's only got interesting, isn't it, over the last 12 months or so. We had this long period of very low interest rates, and there was little shopping around, little in it for consumers. That's changed. Now we're seeing attractive rates of interest being paid on savings and real competition in the savings market. Now, going forward, what are the key trends that you see in the savings market?
First of all, I do agree with you. The savings has really made a comeback. There's money to burn, right? There is an interest rate now that really provides you some substantial dividend on your account. So I would say the origination and the growth of open savings platforms, that's really one thing that we've seen. We've seen the Racing platform, Flagstone, and if we look into our own country, Sweden, we can see Avanza, that is really like a portal for savings and funds and various assets, and even, well, you're familiar with the unicorn Klarna, I presume. They're offering deposit accounts or savings accounts through Avanza. So I think there is, all those unicorns in the Nordics, and they are intertwined and offering these new services.
I think we're seeing that in the UK, definitely. You mentioned Flagstone or Raisin, but you got the likes of Hargreaves Lansdown with their active savings platform, AJ Bell with the platform, and actually many of these wealth managers are making more money on the savings platforms than they are through their investment platforms. So that's definitely an area that we're seeing growth. And I also, literally, we were talking about open banking and open finance earlier, weren't we? I think there will also be areas that I think probably stimulate more competition. So expect to see more of that. What else? What other trends are you seeing?
Right. So talking about savings and the interest rates are higher, we can really see wealth management firms, independent wealth management firms, now complete their offerings. They're not just selling funds and stock picking. They're basically adding the savings accounts to its portfolio and to its clients. And so I think reasons for that, obviously, money to be earned, but it's also an asset that is relatively stable in an uncertain world that we see. Well, obviously, they would like to compete with the high street banks as well.
The Nordics are also sort of known for having a focus on green. And there's been a lot of focus on green, sustainable banking in the UK. We've seen things like green mortgages launched. We've seen less on the deposit side. What are you seeing in terms of green and sustainable banking?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. No, it's really growing. There is a huge customer demand of, they're basically eco-conscious. They would like to make sure how they save is really sustainable, it's green. We also have a client, one of the larger agricultural banks in our region, that has provided different savings forms in many shapes and forms to make their clients save more sustainable. So yeah, I mean, Bilia is all for it. We're here to support it and make sure we, underpin it and make it even bigger.
Very good. No, I think it's a really important, growing area.
It is.
I think we're getting close to being out of time. Just to conclude and wrap things up, I think it's really this sort of comparison between the UK and the Nordics. I think is really interesting, and some of the stuff that you can bring to the UK. What do you think the UK can learn from the Nordics, and vice versa, the Nordics can learn from the UK?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the strong, vibrant FinTech community here in the UK, I think that's an example, and we also saw it in other speeches, how the government collaborates with the industry and the regulators and other parties that are really important to create a huge ecosystem. And I think a testament of this is basically why we're here today, FinTech North, right? So
I agree. I think it's been a tremendous success in the UK.
Yeah.
This FinTech ecosystem has grown from almost nowhere and supported by the industry, and it's great to have events like this. So you don't have that in the Nordics?
Of course. No. But I would say in a different shape and form. We basically have a strong, the academia and the startup community works really well together. I think the governmental has not been that supportive in that. Well, there are a number of reasons. I won't dig into them, but there is an innovation center called UIC, which is a tech hub, basically FinTech, MedTech, just based north of Stockholm, and they are, I think they are qualifies as the 4th largest and most important tech hub. So yes, there are collaborations, but in different shapes and forms.
Yeah, very good. No, well, thanks very much for joining us today. It's been really interesting to hear about Vilja, the Nordics, deposits market, and I think wish you every success in your market entry. I think there's a great opportunity for you. Before you go, you've got to tell us a bit about these. Are they safe to eat? What are they? Are they going to...
Well, Ian had one before he entered the stage, and you look all right. So, I mean, grab one and have a pill, a chill pill. It's, what was it? Was it mint or? Orange Tic Tac. You can eat it safely. Yeah, if you're eco-conscious, eat it.
So I know Peter, Madeline, Frederick are all around for the rest of the day, so do take the opportunity to catch them over lunch or any one of the breaks, hear more about Vilja, talk about the Nordics. I know they'd be delighted to have a chat with you. But no, thank you, Peter. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you, Ian, and thank you, FinTech North. We would love to have a chat, so see you.
Thanks to you as well, Ian. Fantastically chaired that discussion, and thanks so much to Peter, Madeline, Frederick, and the team at Vilja for supporting us today as brand sponsors. Thanks also to MasterCard as well, and to Lenvi, our headline sponsors, for helping shape the content of this session. It's been awesome listening to you all. So we've been kind of here, there, and everywhere, I think, so far today at FinTech North. But let's have a bit of a deeper dive into Liverpool, into the Liverpool City region. So Julian, do you want to come up on stage and take over from here? I'll move your slides on for you as you get over here. You can see them on there. So.
Nice one. Perfect, thanks very much. Yeah, great session. Thank you, guys, Ian and Peter, and everyone that's been speaking so far this morning. As Joe says, it's been quite the variety. Between now and lunch, what we're going to do is I'm going to give a quick recap on a report that Whitecap produced and published last summer, which is just going to bring you all up to speed with the findings of that report. And then we're going to have a panel, and we're going to talk about what's happened since the report and what still needs to happen in this region in order for FinTech to continue to prosper. For anyone that doesn't know Whitecap, we're a regionally focused strategy consulting company. We have 6 offices in the UK. 3 of them are in the north. Unfortunately, we don't have a Liverpool one at the moment, but as Richard from DTM is constantly telling me, we're really there you are. We need one, and I agree with you. But we have a focus on what's happening regionally. Most of our clients are regional, and we do a lot of work on regional tech-enabled ecosystems, particularly in FinTech. And we produced a report which was published last year. It was published in collaboration with a number of organizations in this region, which was a really kind of key factor in that work. It was a very kind of involved piece of work. We had a regular steering group involving the organizations whose logos are on this screen. We ran some group sessions. We interviewed a lot of people from around the region. And of course, it was in collaboration with FinTech North as well. And I'm just going to talk you through why that was significant and what the report said. We've heard a bit about the Khalifa Review today. To recap on the Khalifa Review, one of the 5 main themes was around national connectivity, and the Khalifa Review highlighted 10 key regional FinTech clusters around the UK, but it actually said there were 25 that had been identified. It just only named 10. You can be sure that Liverpool was one of those 25, but it wasn't named, and I think that sort of lighted a bit of a fuse in this region of like, how do we get on there? We don't want to be excluded from FinTech. We need to make sure that Liverpool is front and centre. Some of the conversations we had with the guys at the Growth Company were quite pivotal to that, and so the Khalifa Review kind of played a part in. And continues to play a part in the growth of regional FinTech. And we heard from Senya earlier from CFIT, which was created on the back of the Khalifa Review as well. Peter from Innovate Finance had a version of this slide earlier on. The different regional bodies that have formed around the UK, that had all happened before the Khalifa Review, but this group is very active and comes together and talks. And Liverpool is part of this conversation and this network through its involvement with FinTech North. From our point of view at Whitecap, I mentioned that we've done quite a lot of analysis of regional tech ecosystems. These are the regions we've analysed from a FinTech perspective, and we've published reports on all these regions. Some of them we've published multiple reports on, which has enabled us to show the progress and the growth and development. We've done one on Liverpool, which was last year, and although we've got Norfolk on this map, that report doesn't come out until next month. So that's where we are now, in case you weren't sure. So the Liverpool report. This was the front cover. If you haven't seen this and you want to look at it, just Google Whitecap Liverpool FinTech report, and it'll come up top in Google. What did we find? Well, I won't read all these points out. I'm just going to summarize because I want to spend more time on the panel than talking you through something that you may well have already seen. 2 key things. This region is undergoing major innovation investment. It was quite striking to us when we were talking to people during the process of developing the report that there's a really big focus on innovation investment in this region. And it's not just talk. There's quite a lot of action. You can see 107 innovation assets and projects in the region, big targets for innovation, and also the GVA growth of over 52% in the digital sector is a really impressive stat, and in a sector that's highly competitive, not just in the north but across the UK. And then from a FinTech point of view, I think it's fair to say we found more than we expected and more than the people we were working with on the project expected. We identified 42 different FinTech companies. In this region, the majority of them were startups and scale-ups, so it's a growing ecosystem, although we kind of expect to find more FinTechs in that space. Significant contribution to the regional economy, and as Joe said earlier, key strengths in payments and wealth tech, but also accounting and insurtech. Cash Plus Bank got a mention earlier on in one of the welcoming addresses, and Swoop is also in this region. There's also some pretty big established financial services brands, as you can see at the bottom there. We generated a lot of stats around the region, and I won't try and present all of these to you, but I'll just sort of focus on the ones on the right-hand side, which kind of told us a bit about what are these FinTech companies. 9 out of 10 of them have a B2B business model, which is not unusual, but it's probably at the higher end. Usually we find that number to be sort of 80-85% in other regions. 21% have a B2C business model. Some have B2B and B2C, which is why those don't add up to 100%. That's pretty typical of the FinTech sector. It's very dominated by B2B models, although We've been doing some interesting research recently that's shown that the B2C, if they do sort of scale up and get traction, can be extremely successful businesses. 500 people working within those startups and scale-ups in the region. Average age of the founders, 48 years old, which means that on average they were 39 when the firm started. It's pretty much bang on the national average that we've observed across different regions. FinTech founders tend to be experienced, not all, but generally quite experienced people. We drew an infographic, as we do for all the regions that we report on, and this, I think the thing to sort of take away from this is that FinTech isn't just about FinTech companies. FinTech's about an entire ecosystem. It's about financial services, it's about tech, it's about professional services, it's about investors, it's about education, it's about the public sector, and it's also about sort of physical space and property and people that run those organizations. So we mapped everything onto this graphic here. Payments, when we looked at the subsectors, like where are all these 42 FinTech firms, which sectors are they in? Payments was the dominant one. That's not unusual. Payments has been the dominant sector in every regional FinTech ecosystem that we've published reports on. And the vast majority of firms were based in Liverpool, which, again, it's not a surprise. We expect that in the regions that we analyse. We published a big stream of key findings and recommendations. We're going to sort of go into these on the panel, so there's not really any need for me to cover them in any detail now. But general themes here were more activity, more engagement, more support for entrepreneurs, more links between fintechs and the financial services ecosystem, sort of better links between the education sector and the fintech industry, I think they were, yeah. Oh, and helping people understand what a career in FinTech really means. What might a career be? It's brilliant. Today we've got some students here today, actually, which is always fantastic. We're always welcome students at our conferences. But the question we get most commonly from FinTech students is, what are my career options? What route could I go down? What does a job in FinTech really mean? So I'm going to stop there with the presentation, because the main focus of this session before lunch is to talk with some key people from the region about what is going to happen here next. So if I can get all my panelists to come and grab a comfy seat at the front, make yourselves at home in the spotlight. It's pretty bright, actually. Don't try yeah. Right then. Well, we'll put their names on screen so that you know who they are. Don't need to be sat in any order, because there's not a line this time. I'm going to just invite you guys to introduce yourselves one by one, if that's okay. Kate, I'm actually going to start with you. I know Gavin's grabbed the mic, but I'm going to go ladies first. Sorry, Gavin. Yeah.
Do I need the mic? Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kate Roberts from GTM Legal. I'm partner there and head of our Liverpool office. We've been involved with fintechs for probably the last 12 years now, working with startups, scale-ups through to PLCs, and have sort of engaged with them throughout that journey. We've been sort of heavily involved with FinTech North since around 2021, 2022, when we co-hosted the gamification and FinTech event down at Eagle Labs. And following that event, it was very interesting to be able to talk to other key players within the city region about what we wanted to do, or what the ecosystem looked like at that stage, and where we wanted to take it. And talking to Whitecap, talking to FinTech North, talking to Growth Platform, it was really obvious that the other regions that were, or the other cities rather, that were driving forward with their growth of FinTech had all had this Whitecap report undertaken. And our name was missing. It was notably missing from the map that Julian showed just a short while ago. So what we sought to do then together, collaboratively, was to look at the way we could come together with the key sponsors to engage Whitecap to produce that report for us as a city region. So we had something tangible to go out to the market, to go out and talk to people, engage on what was happening in the LCR ecosystem. So that was something that we at DTM were really keen to drive, push forward and get involved in. And, ultimately that's why we're here today, why we've had the report done last year, And it's, you know, we've been able to use that platform to have, I think, the largest event that FinTech North have put on in the city region. And it's absolutely wonderful to be sat here on the panel sharing the stage with Danielle, Andy and Gavin.
Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Carrington, and this is actually the last day that I can say that I'm a colleague of the Growth Platform, because as of Tuesday next week we will all be fully integrated into the combined authority. So we previously have operated as the Liverpool City Region's growth company. To any businesses who are in the audience that might be looking for support from us from kind of any business angle, that will continue and nothing will change for you. I just say it more for the people that I bump into at networking sessions who are asking me kind of what the gossip is about when the integration will be done. I'll close that loop for you, it's Tuesday. So I'm an internationalisation manager, which is just a slightly fancier way of saying that I work in the Liverpool City Regions and with investment agency. So predominantly working on attracting foreign direct investment and also kind of any other businesses nationwide who might be looking to take space within the Liverpool City region, showcasing that across the digital and creative sector. But we've also, within the past 6 to 9 months, started working quite closely alongside colleagues in the Department for Business and Trade and Liverpool Chamber on the trade elements of that too. So FinTech forms one part, obviously, of the whole digital and creative sector that we operate with, but it has definitely been something that has taken up a lot of time in my mind over the past 18 months and also my diary. So definitely something that will still continue. We've done a lot of work in the space with other stakeholders such as DTM, RSM, plenty of kind of other organisations, the University of Liverpool, everybody who was on the screen for the report, and we've also picked up a lot more along the way, which is obviously really exciting because then you can see the kind of difference and how much has changed already in such a short space of time. So long may that continue. We are always kind of on hand to adopt more people into the ecosystem that we are creating. So if anything strikes your interest throughout this, obviously come and chat with us at the end. But that's me.
Thanks very much. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Andy Porter. I'm a co-founder and the commercial director of an insurtech company based in Liverpool called iSeed. Looking at the stats on the screens, I've been actually living the FinTech dream for about 10 years myself now. We started the company back in 2014. We really started to grow and sell our products to the insurance market about 4 years later. And ever since then, we've been working internationally with a number of large insurers, still based here in the city region. And so, yeah, here to share my experiences about actually starting a business in FinTech in the Liverpool area.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Gavin Brown. I'm an associate professor here at the University of Liverpool in financial technology. I joined the university about 4 years ago now, originally to design the MSc FinTech program, which has now got its third cohort, many of whom are here today. I had breakfast with some of the students who were really keen and hopefully had a good morning so far. Big thank you to Julian for inviting me today. I think we first met, I gave a talk at was it the UK Building Societies Conference in Leeds? So that was very good to see you there, but looking forward to discussing things from an educational perspective today. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to come back to each of you and ask you a bit more sort of specific stuff about what you've been doing. And I guess I'll come back to you first, Kate. Just since the report came out, you guys have been part of the steering group that was formed as a result of the findings, and you've kind of instigated activity to try and bring people together, some of the sort of social events and entrepreneur engagement. Maybe you could sort of bring that to life for people.
Yeah, of course. So as Julian showed earlier, there were a number of recommendations that came out of the report, which we then set up a steering group, which we've renamed the Growth Group, the FinTech Growth Group. And the reason for that was what we didn't want to happen with that report in our city region was for it to be a report that had been produced, had a huge amount